November 25th, 2002. It's an all-too-familiar picture. Pop diva Whitney Houston standing in support of her man, bad boy R&B singer Bobby Brown. This incident, just one of Brown's run-ins with the law, prompted a forced appearance for his wife, one Whitney performed eagerly.
I think it's a very legitimate attraction. It may not be a healthy one, but it's very legitimate and her emotions run very deep.
But the spotlight remains on Houston, held firmly in place by her monumental talent and her self-proclaimed drug addiction.
I know she's been shaky a couple of times on a couple of shows. She's like lost her key or something. But the talent's not gone. The talent is still there.
Once a superstar success story with 6 Grammys and 3 starring movie roles, Whitney Houston is now almost as famous for her failures. Today, she wants to change that.
I think when Whitney made declarations that she was going on a spiritual journey, people, including me, were very hopeful.
But even her spiritual journey has been questioned because it involves a controversial religious sect. How did the good girl pop diva fall victim to the vices of drugs and alcohol and end up in Israel in what some call a cult?
Well, like so many other things that happened to Whitney, she would consider herself an outsider.
Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born in Newark, New Jersey on August 9th, 1963, into a family of famous gospel singers.
In some ways, she was destined for fame.
Her mother, Cissy Houston, has long been a fixture in the gospel industry. Dionne Warwick is her first cousin, and Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, is Houston's godmother.
That sort of talent has to influence you, and it must propel you and give you energy to move forward.
In spite of their musical heritage, the Houstons were an ordinary family with strong religious ties to the New Hope Baptist Church.
The outlet that gospel music provided in the church back in the 1960s was like a haven. It was like an oasis, it was a place of fresh water.
Her mother, Cissy, was the church music director, but often left her job and family and hit the road singing backup for Dionne, Aretha, even Elvis.
She used to go with her mother to the recording studios, and sometimes Whitney would be asked if she could come in, and she'd come in, and once in a while she'd say, "Ooh, I like that," or "I didn't," and her mother said, "Don't ever do that again," and she learned to be quiet.
But Whitney wasn't quiet when she sang in the New Hope Baptist Choir.
When you put that type of knowledge and foundation into a child as they're growing up, when it's all the way around you and it surrounds you, it's in your system, it's in your blood.
Outside of the church and her family, Houston had few friends.
Whitney wasn't outgoing. She was a bit, I would say she was a little quiet. Yeah. Not an introvert, but quiet.
And since Cissy had a very poor childhood, she wanted her child to have the best. So she would always dress her girl in ruffles and pigtails and ribbons and all sorts of little niceties that Cissy thought was great, but when little Whitney got to school, the kids made fun of her.
As a result of her early alienation, she was often left to play with her 2 older brothers.
Her brothers, Michael and Gary, were quite supportive of her. If she got in trouble, they were there, as they say, they had her back.
But a backyard romp with her brothers almost cost her her voice.
She was playing with a coat hanger, and one of her brothers hit her, and the thing lodged in the back of her throat. And not only did they not think that she would ever sing, but that she would lose the ability to speak.
This traumatic event could not only have deprived a little girl her voice, but ultimately denied the music industry one of its greatest talents. But Whitney recovered and soon sang solo for the first time. Whitney got her first taste of what it felt like to be a star.
And in her mind, I always felt that she connected that gift with her connection to God.
That same year, Whitney's mother enrolled her in a Catholic all-girls school. She was already having trouble fitting in at her old school, and now she would have to deal with the added friction of being a Baptist in a Catholic school. Desperate for friendship, Whitney began sneaking behind her mother's back.
Whitney, as she grew older, got smart. She'd take a change of clothes with her to school, and when she got there, she would dress down, so to speak, into jeans and a jersey or a shirt, and then after school, she would switch back.
So began the struggle within young Whitney to live up to her mother's image while trying hard to create her own. The same inner turmoil would haunt Houston later in life. Toward the end of high school, Whitney's parents split up and she began skipping class in favor of modeling jobs. Modeling got her attention, but not self-respect.
But for her, this was baloney. She didn't like it. She made great money, but she felt it was a waste of her time.
She began to join her mother on club dates, singing backup for Chaka Khan and Lou Rawls. Then, when she was 19, Clive Davis, the founder of Arista Records, saw her perform at a New York nightclub. He vowed to make her a star.
We knew that she was going to be a star. It was decided, and Clive had decided that.
Almost immediately, Arista offered her a record deal. Her mother told her to take it.
It certainly must have been a double-edged sword for her mother, who had spent so many years struggling and never quite made it.
Both Whitney and Sissy were aware that the daughter was on her way to accomplishing what the mother never did. Coming up next, the little choir girl tells her mother to step aside. A new Houston star is born. Whitney Houston was only 19 and well on her way to superstardom. 2 years and $250,000 were invested in her debut album. Clive Davis was the architect of that plan, with Kenneth Reynolds as the marketing director.
That record had to be big, okay? I can't emphasize that enough, okay? It had to be. You don't understand what we went through at that company during the process of that record. Everything was Whitney, 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 everything.
Davis complained Houston's first cut of Saving All My Love for You sounded, quote, too black. He insisted to go mainstream, she had to lose her gospel heritage. Like the little girl sneaking behind her mother's back, Whitney was in a position where, to fit in, she had to deny her roots.
It aided in her talent, but it wasn't a necessary part of the program. You know, Clive wanted a pop artist.
So here was a gal who really did not belong to anybody. And of course, this was furthered when she went to work for Arista Records because they tried to market her as a very softened down black image.
Davis further protested the album cover made her look, quote, too ethnic. But the album, Whitney Houston, was released anyway in February 1985 and held the title of best-selling solo debut album in history for 10 years. In spite of Davis's work to make her more mainstream, 21-year-old Whitney attributed her success to her gospel roots.
Gospel taught me to know what I was singing about and to be able to feel everything that you're singing. And my mother always told me, you can't sing anything that you don't feel.
The following year, Houston received her first Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Performance for Saving All My Love for You, the very song Davis had insisted she redo before its release. She was 22 years old and a millionaire.
I think Whitney's success went way beyond her own dreams, way beyond her family's dreams, maybe even way beyond Clive Davis's conception of what she could be. He knew he was holding and molding magic.
For all her fame and money, once she was on the road, she was still a small-town girl from New Jersey.
Every day when we checked out of a hotel, I brought up everyone's room charges, and she had one charge, $3.35 every day. And every day it was $3.35. It was a call home to her mother.
Sissy shared in her daughter's success, but the critics burned Whitney, claiming there was no soul in her singles.
Whitney got to the point where her records went straight to the pop station. And that's every artist's dream. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the base.
Still, Clive Davis ignored the critics. In 1987, Houston released her second album, Whitney. It was the first album by a female to enter the charts at #1. But meanwhile, backstage, Whitney Houston was beginning to lose herself in a developing pop diva image.
There were two people on stage, the real Whitney inside going through the motions, and the Whitney that the audience expected, the prom queen of soul that she became.
For the next 2 years, Whitney continued to be criticized for ignoring her humble roots. The criticism peaked in 1989 when she was jeered at the Soul Train Awards by a mostly black crowd with taunts of Oreo.
That was a travesty. That should have never happened. But because she had gone so pop and had lost touch with the black audience, They booed her.
But it wasn't the catcalls that would change her life. That night, she met Bobby Brown.
She was very attracted by his stage image, his very gutsiness.
He was 20, she was 26. He was worth $5 million, she was worth 70. Whitney was charmed.
He's willful, and he had success at an early age. There are things they could understand about each other that maybe no one else in the world could.
He's doing hip-hop music, and he wants to become more mainstream. She's doing very marshmallow mainstream music and wants to become more black community, ethnic-oriented. And so everyone assumed, oh, this is just a PR front.
In 1990, Houston redirected her focus to R&B. She released her third album, I'm Your Baby Tonight. 2 years later, at 28, she married Bobby Brown.
She needed someone to love and someone to latch onto.
Whitney then made her acting debut in The Bodyguard and had a daughter, Bobby Christina. But there were signs of trouble. Her '94 tour was plagued by late arrivals, cancellations, and a hoarse voice.
I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, what's going on? Why is this? And I thought about the Whitney that I knew, and this doesn't seem like the Whitney that I knew.
1 year later, Houston starred in Waiting to Exhale, a film about finding Mr. Right.
You finally saw 4 African-American women who had class, who had style, who dealt with problems, who didn't deal with the problems and go off and shoot dope in the veins or drink themselves to oblivion. You know, that made the landmark.
Ironically, her own Mr. Right was entering the Betty Ford Clinic. But Whitney's acting career continued to grow. By 1996, she was one of the highest paid black actresses in entertainment. In her third film, The Preacher's Wife, Whitney returned to her gospel roots. That soundtrack became the best-selling gospel album ever.
It's in an area that she felt very comfortable in. That's something that was part of her and not forced on her.
In 1998, Houston released My Love Is Your Love, her first pop album in 8 years. But Bobby's behavior thrust him into her spotlight when he served 5 days in a Florida jail for a probation violation. Whitney stood protectively by his side.
In her mind, this is her man. She's really making the choices, but yes, she does listen to the echo of what he says. So it's very complicated.
Then it was Whitney's behavior during her '99 tour that became the subject of gossip. Another tour plagued by cancellations and a strained voice. This time, her mother intervened. Suspicious of substance abuse, Cissy Houston confronted a troubled Whitney. Her daughter was unreceptive.
Cissy was not very successful. She tried for most of the evening, all into early in the morning. She and the drug counselor was trying to get her to go into treatment. They eventually got her to try a few spa resorts, but that was too plush and too easy to slip.
Then, in January 2000, Whitney was busted in Hawaii with half an ounce of marijuana. The diva was dismissive of the police.
But because she did her usual thing, I'm Whitney, don't tell me what to do, and zoomed off, that's what took all the drama to the next step and made the headlines.
A minor drug charge foreshadows a superstar's crash. Next. In March 2000, just 2 months after her drug bust, Houston was rehearsing for the Academy Awards. After forgetting words and straining on notes, the Academy told the 6-time Grammy winner to go home.
The Academy and Whitney's version, when they tentatively chose to speak, was Whitney was not in condition to perform.
A year later, she seemed back on top, scoring the biggest recording contract in history in excess of $100 million.
She has a history. She's guaranteed to make you money.
But 1 month later, that guarantee seemed less certain when a gaunt, frail Whitney took the stage at Michael Jackson's 30th anniversary concert. The audience gasped aloud at the sight of her skeletal frame.
I gasped too. I mean, clearly it looked like the signs of someone that was not well.
When Houston failed to appear 3 nights later, headlines screamed she was dead.
Whitney herself says one of the biggest wake-up calls were those photographs of her.
In November 2001, Houston appeared to be getting it together. She paid a fine and was able to get the drug charges dropped in Hawaii. She also came clean to her fans, admitting she had a problem with drugs and alcohol. The same day the interview was taped, Bobby was again arrested for a list of violations, including marijuana possession.
Bobby and the pressures of their marriage may have contributed to Whitney's stress. But ultimately, it's your decision. It's her decision to get involved, and let's hope it's going to be her decision to clean herself up.
Just Whitney, her first album in 4 years, without the man who molded her, Clive Davis, was released in December 2002. Davis had been ousted from Arista and moved on. Friends can only speculate why he chose not to take Whitney Houston with him.
Trust me, if he wanted her or felt that he needed her or whatever, he would have had her.
Instead, Houston relied more heavily on her husband. Bobby Brown produced her comeback single, What You Lookin' At? The track, which targets the media for tarnishing her reputation, flopped.
She was very upset with the press because they wouldn't leave her alone, and she felt very betrayed, very annoyed.
Adding to her sense of betrayal, her father's management company slapped a $100 million lawsuit against her.
Having your father in any way look at you at any stage in your life with dollar signs attached is devastating. And Whitney's not immune to that, even though for many years of her life, she did serve to support her family.
The suit claimed, among other things, that Houston failed to pay for services which helped get her off the hook on the drug charge.
Whitney was left on the sidelines saying on television, it's a shame it has to come to this about money.
Her once-beloved father died before the suit ever got to court. She did not attend the funeral. In May 2003, Whitney Houston seemed to take a step down the road to redemption again when she traveled with her family to Israel to visit a group called the Black Hebrews, once again leaving her Baptist roots behind.
We have some notion that they're vegetarian. We have some notion that for some of them, polygamy is allowed. And what we really know about them is that their gospel music, their choruses, their singing groups are renowned. And my understanding was that's what originally attracted Whitney.
In a live televised Israeli interview, Whitney and Bobby spoke openly about their fascination with the Black Hebrews, a group founded in Chicago in the 60s. For Whitney, this was the promised land.
We are here on a spiritual retreat again, and this is our spiritual time, spiritual renewal. And our brothers and sisters of Dimona have welcomed us with open arms, and that is our cure.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon greeted the famous couple, and they were encouraged to visit the ancient city of Dimona.
Life in Dimona is just like
simple.
It's simple. It's
peaceful.
It's peaceful.
Love. There is no hurt. There's no crime. There's no war. There's no
death.
No death.
Anything.
There is no sickness. There is no people dying of unjustly causes. No murder. No crime.
No matter how much exploring that she may do, deep down inside are those still church traditional roots that she's accustomed to.
Whitney Houston, grounded in the gospel or destined for a fall, when we come back. Despite a stormy marriage and self-proclaimed drug abuse, Whitney Houston has remained one of pop music's reigning divas for more than 15 years.
Walk into a room and hear one of her records go on and see how you have to stop and respond emotionally and remember the first time you heard that song, and that'll define her real success.
However, Just Whitney had been out for 4 months when Houston returned from Israel and peaked on the Billboard chart at a disappointing number 9.
That tells you something right there. Without any promotion, she peaked at number 9. That's a solid buying audience that's there.
I think Whitney is on a comeback, 100%, because Whitney understands the roots that's in her.
The next move clearly belongs to Houston, and many are hoping the young girl who was presented to the world with a face that wasn't her own can now define her own image. The outstanding question, can she still tap into her talent and reach those heavenly heights?
Is Whitney going through a difficult time, personally and artistically? I think it's a fair guess to say so. But Whitney Houston isn't a has-been. Whitney Houston is a big question mark right now, with a lot of people hoping for a positive ending.
He had $1 million. She had 1,000,000 reasons.
She was being cut out of the will.
To murder.
She was going to get Daddy's money no matter what it took.
On Power, Privilege, and Justice. Now on Court TV.